folks, what's going on? It's me, Andrew Westmoreland, back again with yet another video. I just want to start by saying I apologize for this being so early, but uh, if you caught this on a rebroadcast, I do not blame you. I just have to get this out of the way, do this now. It makes the most sense. So we're going to be talking about a lot of controversial topics as well as disturbing events, world events, cultural events, and this is going to be potentially a long one, and I hope that I pace this well so that you could at least get something of value out of this. I have some extra windows open I need to close. Okay. So we've got a lot of things happening, and I do have a outline list that we need to talk about, and it's really interesting because we have this culmination of events that is happening in rapid succession that basically brings me to a point where it feels like we're in the end times, like the biblical end times. And again, this is coming from somebody who's not a Christian. I'm not religious. I just am seeing this stuff, and it makes me think that something is happening that we need to talk about. Like, I don't know how else to say a lot of this stuff other than there's something happening that's beyond us, that's bigger than us. Okay? Give me 1 second. Okay. So, we have World War III on the horizon, essentially. It just seems like what's happening in Ukraine is going to spill over into greater Europe, and a back and forth with in between Europe and Russia, and NATO's going to be involved in some. It just seems inevitable at this point. I don't know that we're going to get away from this, that we're going to recover from this, to avoid a World War III scenario. Because of the situation in Ukraine, the war, and because of the response of Western nations, including America, we are seeing they're projecting a famine at this point. Let's just be very clear about that. We talked about food shortages and stuff that are foreseeable, and now experts, but they're projecting that this very well could be a legit famine for Western nations. There are already food shortages in Europe. Food prices are through the roof. I think Germany's seeing 50% increase in food prices. I think it was Spain that has basically a rationing on food in grocery stores. Limit one item per customer or something kind of thing for certain food items. We kind of saw that too during the whole COVID bullshit that our leaders put us through, the restrictions. And a lot of this has to do with that. It's like a culmination of events, a chain reaction that anyone who took a step back and tried to see cause and effect could predict some of this stuff. I'm not going to pretend like I knew everything because I don't, but I did predict a decent amount of some of these things. And one of the biggest things is, war can create famine, but famine can also create war. We created essentially an artificial famine by, stifling or shutting down our supply chains, by damaging our economy by saying you can't go to work. The chain reaction, is still being felt today, 2 years on. Now, because of the Ukraine situation and the sanctions against Russia, we got like 96% of our fertilizer from Russia. A lot of Europe also gets most of their fertilizer from Russia. And these are just like things that I've been trying to put as a theme on this channel, things that I talk about, using basic logic, reason, rational thought. Look at cause and effect. Look at the consequences of actions that are being taken place. The consequences of policies that government are putting in place. So we're looking at famine now, and that's a very strong word. And I wasn't calling it a famine because nobody said it was food shortages. Okay, well, we could see 40 to 50% less food yields this fall and winter, and that would hurt us a lot. Let's be real, it's going to hurt us a lot. But now they're using terms like famine, and I don't think that's necessarily an exaggeration. Okay, so you need to start looking at this and preparing, not only just physically preparing, like maybe you can buy some extra rice or beans or canned goods, but emotionally prepare psychologically, or I'm sorry, prepare psychologically for what this could mean, because we're used to a lavish excess in America, most of us, and it's not even that's the thing, is just briefly I want to talk about this. In America, we just live this way. Our standard of living is, I would argue, the highest in the world. Maybe compared, there might be a couple little micronations like, some of these Middle Eastern island nations might be technically higher in a standard of living than us, but generally speaking, the vast amount of people, highest concentration of people, America has the highest standard of living, and that is going to be reduced dramatically. And the question is, how permanent is it? Is this going to be something that's going to last a season, 4 months? Is this something that's going to last a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I don't know. That remains to be seen. Then you have the situations with abortion, in that for some reason people are still not taking the most obvious thing. It's so painfully obvious that abortion is murder. And we've gone into this, and I know it's super controversial, and a lot of people get really weird about it, and they get really emotional, but it's very clear, especially after a certain point, okay, after 3 months plus, it's clearly a human being that is, it just happens to be developing, that you killing it is murder. Okay. Now in DC, we have this highly controversial story, this just deeply disturbing story where, these anti-abortion activists, these pro-life activists, somehow acquired all of these fetuses, and what I can only describe as fully term corpses, these infant corpses, and the local DC prosecutor's office is not going to be investigating cause of death or to see if it was these are legal or illegal abortions. It's just, I mean, the images are shocking. Obviously, it's hard to look at, but it again, a lot of people don't want to put two and two together. They we're so insulated from the harsh realities of the world that even talking about certain things, people freak out and like, oh, I can't listen to this. I'm not gonna watch this video because it's just too hard. And I'm like, bro, do you understand how reality works? Do you understand that everything is not peaches and cream, unicorns, candy cane, and rainbows? Everything, we've had it so good. Most of us don't even see death in any like horrific way in our lifetimes. Yeah, loved ones die, pets die, stuff like that. And very few of us see horrific car crashes, mangled bodies, and corpses. Okay? Even fewer of us see war and the evils of that. And almost none of us know what an abortion is or what it actually entails or what it looks like. Okay? But if you take the time and you have the, I guess, courage is a fair term. If you have the courage to understand that you're about to look at horror and you look for this information, you look for these images, I think it is important for your personal maturity to understand what's happening in the world. Look at the images in Ukraine, the war images. Okay? Look at the massacres. Look at, I'm just saying in general, look at these things. And I'm not saying you need to, it's not something for enjoyment or anything like that. It is, you are intentionally trying to expose yourself to horror so that it adds a layer of protection. It's like a scar, it's like a callus. It makes you stronger. And in the event, God forbid, something bad happens in your life or you are exposed to it physically, you are not so shocked that you become worthless and you shut down, you freeze. This is I'm just saying, like, it could help you be a better person to survive um, in the event that horror takes place. Make no mistake about it, I'm not going to pretend that looking at a picture on the internet or a video on the internet is going to be the same as facing these horrors in real life, but it could help. Okay, that being said, yeah, in DC, they're not interested in looking and investigating if these, at least two of them appear to be full-term infant corpses, to see if these were illegal abortions. There's been talk of in California, there's some new law being proposed that uh, the way it was originally posted, the way it was originally um, presented, would say that the basically you can kill a baby a week after it being born, and there would be no investigation or prosecution, and you'd have no civil liability as well. And I believe they're trying to change the wording because it clearly uh, not just angered but like shocked people who were reading this because just the language was just so obvious. And you're like, huh, what do you mean you can't be prosecuted if the mother, if a newborn baby dies by actions of the parent? Like it literally said that, and it's like kind of implying like, okay, well, the spirit of the bill allegedly would be like if fetal infant death syndrome. Obviously, it's a horrible tragedy, and sometimes babies are just born weak or there's some defect that's not automatically detected by doctors when it's born, and sometimes babies die. Okay, it happens, and it sucks. It's horrific. But instead of specifically wording that in this California bill to be like, yeah, if a baby dies 7 days after it was born, we'll take extra care in the investigation to ensure that we're not being abnormally abusive towards the mother or the parents to they're already having a hard time. Instead it's just like, oh, we're just gonna leave it alone. It's like, you know what you're saying, right? You know that there's going to be sickos who are going to be like, oh, that means I could kill my baby and not go to prison for it. So this is what we're dealing with. This is our reality. And then you have the whole groomer trend that's happening right now, where Democrats and leftists and these legacy mainstream media outlets, and they're all saying like, oh, they're calling us groomers, like that's just so offensive, it's so terrible. And I'm just sitting here like, first of all, I don't care, right? I I don't care about these people's feelings because they just spent the last 8+ years calling anyone who disagreed with them Nazis. They called them Klansmen. They called them, white supremacists. They called them all the worst possible things that you could be labeled in our culture and society. And minus pedophiles, mind you, because they're the actual pedophiles. I think statistically speaking, that would be true if such a poll could be made. I don't know that that's reasonable, but these people are like textbook definition of projection so many times over. California's California's a very weird state, uh, but these people are textbook definition of projection. It's like everything they accuse somebody else of, it's something they've been doing. Okay, and if it's not directly obvious that that's what they're doing, it's like something in peripheral, right? So Democrats and liberals and leftists have been saying, Republicans and conservatives, these high-profile people have been, they're working with Russia and doing all this stuff with Russia. It's like, well, it's not directly projection. They've just been working with Ukrainians, and they're inspired by Russia, by communism and socialism, and they're inspired by China and their you know the history of all that, directly working with them, financial ties, all that stuff. And it's like, dude, I don't know how else to do this, to describe this stuff to people, because they don't seem to get it. There's a very small group of people who actually understand what I'm trying to tell them. And if you're watching this, you're probably one of those people. But most people outside of this small group are not even there yet. They're basically like they're in elementary school, and we're having conversations that are so deep, so many layers deep, so advanced. Like I like to say, like we're beyond a doctorate level sometimes in what we're talking. We're talking about like scholars dusting out old, 1,000-year-old scrolls, in deep storage, trying to translate what's happening and trying to, cross-reference and try to verify and do all this stuff. And they're still talking about elementary school things that are so insignificant. And it's hard. It's hard because we're light years more advanced in our conversation of personal progression, of personal evolution, and understanding the world and how it works. And we have to interact with people who are infantile, who are sophomoric. And it's very challenging because you're like, dude, when you hear and it's not just a left-right thing, right? It's not just simply political. It's not necessarily even religious versus atheist. It's just, generally speaking, 95, I think that's a fair number, 95% of the people that I have interacted with have no clue what the fuck is going on in the world, let alone in their own communities. And they read one article or saw one 2-minute local news clip, or they watched a segment on CNN, and they think they're an expert and they're trying to tell you about this thing, and you're like, no. And you could name off like 5 things that are wrong with that and give them sources and all that, and they're still completely oblivious. They don't want to listen to you. They think you're just making it up, even if you provide those resources to them. This is what we have to deal with. What's really interesting to me, though, is the projection with the groomer stuff, because the parental rights in education law in Florida has blown up this huge conversation, primarily on the left. Their reaction to it, they're saying, "Oh, it's don't say gay bill," and it's like, what are you talking about? Well, this bill says that you're not allowed to say gay in Florida. And I'm like, okay, so who said anything about about LGBT issues at all, really? It doesn't show up in the bill at all. It's really interesting to me because they're projecting that. So what they're saying is, by their admission, by their reaction to it, they are saying that you are not they're concerned that you're not allowed to bring up gay issues, LGBT issues in school, specifically targeting small children, you know, preschool 4-year-olds all the way up to 8-year-olds. And they want to do that. But they also attach that modifier of, gay, LGBT issue. I'm like, that's really interesting. And then even further, like a couple weeks into this now, conservatives finally decided or got wise and smart to start reiterating the groomer aspect of this because it's a very easy message to convey. And they're offended by this now. And then, all these articles are popping up basically bringing the gay aspect, the homosexual, the transgender aspect to this that nobody said anything about. Very few people even brought up. Again, they're projecting it. Attaching gay with groomer is a projection from them because they think that most of these sex predators against children are gay or LGBT. Most people that I've heard in the conservative circles didn't even go there until they started bringing this up, and they're like, wait a minute, maybe they're onto something here. Actually, let's look up the statistics on this. Who are the biggest sex predators? Okay? And whether or not I necessarily agree with the statistics, it's interesting. It's something important of note, and you need to look at it. But I say the end times part. I put that in there. Like, are we in the end times? Because I have no clue. But when I grew up as assuming you've heard this before, but I was raised Baptist. We stopped going to church when I was about 12. So my early childhood was a Christian Protestant background, and I remember learning about this, and I was very interested in the Bible for its stories. I thought it was so interesting, like really good sci-fi and fantasy and all this stuff. It was fascinating to me. Separating that, there's certain scripture parts and stuff that I believed in or felt a connection to, but I bring it up again because I look at this and I'm like, yeah, Revelation is like the craziest book in the Bible next to Book of Enoch. But it's very general and vague and stuff like that. But it's really fascinating. It's really interesting. And you look at this and you compare to what it's saying will be happening in the end times. And I'm like, I don't know, disease, the pestilence, the famines, the wars. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's like one of those Nostradamus things where it's like so vague that you could kind of attribute anything that's happening to it. But it makes me wonder because there's something deeper happening besides just surface level events that you could be like, oh, this might be the end times. It's a feeling. And I say that, like, I also have to preface this thought process with, again, understand I'm not a Christian. I don't necessarily believe their doctrine or anything. That doesn't mean that a part of what was presented there isn't true or potentially true. Just like I feel like there are many parts of Buddhism that are very valid and very useful. Hinduism, there's certain parts of that. Judaism, Islam, there are certain aspects of everything that you can take from positive things or things that are of value. So, who is right? I don't know. All I know is I have this feeling because it's for the last, since 2008, I noticed weird things were happening. And good morning. a lot of weird things were happening, just socially, just automatically, like quickly. It was like a switch was flipped where I was an adult in 2008, but I noticed this rapid succession of just conflict and strife and weird social changes. And it was like a 180. We're not talking about, a normal natural progression of things where, well, people have been fighting for gay rights for a long time, and you know, maybe it's just the next wave of the Civil Rights Act. It started getting progressively worse that I noticed back then. And it was like a peripheral kind of thing that was in the background where you had these, child sex criminals. Let's just be real about them. Back then, it was like NAMBLA would pop up in the news, and in the peripheral, I'd hear about the stuff like this. Um, People messing with animals, all manner of weird stuff, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And now it feels like it's just like a free for all, pure chaos. And I wonder if there's a spiritual aspect to this, because I think it's important. You know, I understand that some people are atheists, and they just completely disregard the spiritual. They think it's just fake. It's not real. But I I can't. My personal experiences, the things I know happened or are real. I can't necessarily quantify it. I can't necessarily name it. I can't necessarily explain it to you. But there are certain things that I have had that have just I can't deny that are of spiritual nature. Therefore, it makes me think that there's something more happening, because I feel like there's this I say demonic energy. I like to call things demonic, and again, do not mistake that as me being a religious zealot, a Christian zealot or something. It's I can't find another word for it. These people right now, these leftists, these Democrats, these people who are pushing, why are Republicans so obsessed with groomers? It's like, what do you mean obsessed? Like, you're not obsessed with protecting your children? Like, I'm confused. Like, explain it to me why you are confused. I don't understand how you are not protecting your children at all costs. Children are the most important thing to a parent. Should be. It should be. You getting a facelift is not. You getting a boob job. You getting your ass done. You you getting a manicure, your hair done, or buying fancy clothes and cars and fancy expensive things is secondary to your children's well-being. And we have people out here who are just like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. 5 of the teachers in my kid's school got caught with either sleeping with students or child pornography. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? It's public school. I can't do anything about it. And it's like, dude, you can. You're just refusing to put any effort. You're refusing to put any effort. And I said before, and I know it pisses off a lot of people, but if you do not pull your kids out of public school after knowing the systematic things that are, debauched or degenerate that they're teaching your children, you don't love your kids. And I know that's a strong statement to make, but where do you draw the line? Like, they're teaching your kids to be racist at this point, that white people are oppressing, and even everyone who's not white, that they're oppressing, that people are homophobic and transphobic and all this stuff. That's where they were. Now it's progressing to the point where instead of just teaching them these weird, extreme left-wing ideologies, now they're putting the sexual aspect on it, and it kind of like somehow snuck past parents because they've been so detached. Oh, well, both parents have to work because of the economy. Well, that's just the way it is. And it's like, okay, But a lot of this is just social pressure, part of it from extreme feminism. And we're not just talking about equal rights for women. I don't know anybody who doesn't think that a woman isn't equal to a man. I don't they don't exist in my world. Yeah, there's people who talk shit online or whatever, and I'm sure there's people who keep to themselves and are misogynistic or whatever, but we are talking about the most extreme elements of society that were always off to the fringe. They now have institutional power. Okay? And it just kind of happened over time and nobody really said anything about it. Of course, you had some people who were calling this out for 10 years, 20 years, you know, people before my time even. And for the most part, the general society was just like, oh, you're an extremist for calling out the extremists. And it's really interesting to me that how many of these so-called conspiracy theorists have been right. And that's where we are now is, you know, Alex Jones, his track record of being right is ever increasing. That's like the meme. And you have to understand, I guess everyone's at their own level, right? So if me 5 years ago would not be having this conversation, appeal the 19th or repeal the 19th. After like the Fifth Amendment, I have to look this stuff up. The right of citizens of the United States to vote should not be denied or abridged by the United States on the account of sex. So that's basically giving women the right to vote. That's hilarious. I'll say this. There are a lot of aspects of conservatism that make 100% sense. And anything against some of those aspects are just you're asking for your society to collapse. Okay? But to me, what's really interesting to me is that people confuse a lot of like basic societal values, that how your society flourishes and prospers, with conservatism right now, like in America specifically. Like somehow now, not letting sex perverts groom your kids to become gay or LGBTQ, or you know, thinking that it's okay for adults to mess with kids, somehow that's a conservative value. And I'm like, what happened? What happened in our country? It never used to be like this. I'm going to say something shocking. So, uh, I remember growing up, there were several instances where I overheard adults, you know, I was probably in elementary school, and I overheard adults talking about, like, I think the term they would use back then was like kitty diddlers. And however I heard it or whatever, I can't tell you the context of where or why, but I heard these conversations and they were talking about like what they would do to this person, and it was basically like it was a combination of beating their ass or killing them, like you just kill them, and be damned with the consequences. And I understand that rage, and I'm not gonna tell somebody. I know this is shocking. I'm not one of these people who are like, I don't consider that necessarily murder, because that would be like a vigilante justice thing. That's not necessarily murder. It is illegal. Let's get that very clear. It's very highly illegal. But is it traditionally immoral or unethical? No, because that has happened for thousands of years. If the government doesn't step in for justice, the community does. And I think that's what's happening. We're getting another wave of that. It's coming. And what I mean is, when you have the like stuff like the DC abortion case or tragedy, where those fully developed infant corpses were recovered by the pro-life activists, and the DC prosecutors won't investigate, police won't investigate. You get to a point where people are just going to start taking things in their own hands. Like, I remember in the 90s, there was abortion clinic bombings and stuff I would just, I'm a kid doing my own kid thing, playing with toys and playing make believe and wishing I was a Ninja Turtle and an X-Men and, superheroes and stuff. Well, my parents, the TV's on, the radio's on, and you see stuff in the peripheral. And I remember, stuff like the abortion clinic bombings and stuff, people getting shot up at abortion clinics. And we're getting that wave is coming again, because sometimes people just refuse. They absolutely, yes, they're doing this to disable it. Hold that thought. They're doing. Some people absolutely refuse to compromise their most basic fundamental values. And I've been kind of flexible on some of it. Like, okay, you give me information, if you can articulate and back it up with data, research and stuff like that, I'm gonna like twist a little bit, and I can change my mind with new legitimate information. That's a good way to hold a worldview. But there are just some things like you just can't keep ignoring, and this whole abortion thing to me is just the people who are trying to excuse abortion, like, oh, it's just a clump of cells. Oh, well, it's my body. It doesn't matter what happened, or it doesn't matter. If I say I want to kill whatever is inside of me, that's my choice. And I'm just like, that's a demonic mindset. Okay, instead of trying to come from a place of compassion and love and just being a good human being, they're immediately taking everything to the most darkest depths of depravity and evil. And Stephen, they're doing this to destabilize our society. This is a controlled demolition of society. This is so far beyond destabilizing in my mind. Everything that I keep seeing, it's like they're pretending to be oblivious, or they're pretending it's not happening. What do you mean they're grooming our kids? Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And then these classroom discussions are getting exposed on Zoom calls and stuff, and they're like, these stories keep coming up. In California, this female student was convinced that she was transgender, and that she would be known as a male in school, presented as a male in school, wear male clothing, and change the name to a male name, and but you don't tell your parents. It's like that's grooming. That's grooming. Okay. Now, Brandon asks why. What's the goal? And this is a thing that's been highly contentious for a very long time. When I was growing up, or just getting into my early adulthood, 18, 19, 20, or 20 to whatever, I would see these things that people would say are conspiracy theories, right? What's going on? Hold on one second. Had a former employee. He's doing some other work for them now, so I had to talk to him real quick. So, why? What's the end goal? The issue here was, again, early adulthood. They would call a lot of these things conspiracy theories, things that we know to be true now. And this is what I'm talking about. Back then, people would say stuff like, the globalist agenda, and they want a one world government and all this stuff. I mean, they just openly talk about it now. All right, it's not a conspiracy theory when you have these world leaders and these oligarchs and these super wealthy business elites openly talking about this stuff. So, what is their goal? I think that there is a desire. Obviously, it's for control, right? To control and dominate. And when I would not put it past these people to want to utterly annihilate the modern world. And I know that sounds insane, right? Why would super wealthy, powerful elites and leaders around the world want to annihilate the world? Because it's untenable. How do you control 7 billion people? It's very difficult. You have these mass uprisings all over the planet. People are rioting, people are hungry, people are angry at this policy or that policy. It's very hard to control 7 billion people. And, they're calling everything a conspiracy theory. Oh, depopulation is a conspiracy theory. It's like, well, I don't know that it's necessarily a conspiracy theory, more like a conspiracy on behalf of the people who are perpetrating it. When you talk about Bill Gates openly has TED Talks and stuff and these conferences, and he'll openly on stage in front of huge audiences, transmit it over the internet, everyone could see it live, talking about that there's too many people and that we can reduce the population. Yeah, I don't think he said the way he worded it was not like kill people. It was basically reduce the birth rate. Too many babies are being made, so let's reduce the birth rate essentially. And it's like it has the same effect, just it takes longer, right? Instead of just killing people, well, that's obviously shocking and just evil. But if you do like a soft depopulation where, well, maybe you don't need to have babies. Well, climate change and this and that, and shame people not to having babies. Maybe you should do abortions, don't have a baby. Here's some birth control, don't have babies. And that's not to confuse my personal views on population. I think we have too many people in the sense of our standards of living. Like everyone in the world, 7 billion people can't live like Americans. It's impossible. We don't have the resources or the technology or the infrastructure. Not going to happen. It's just not. 1 billion people could maybe live like Americans. That seems reasonable. But once you get anything above that, it's just not really tenable. Quality of life and all that stuff. Point is, these things that they keep calling conspiracy theories, what they end up doing is these fact checkers, they will take the most extreme forum or talking point from these communities and try to fact check that. And it's like, that's not what people are saying. The average person's like, no, Bill Gates, and they quote Bill Gates. Bill Gates said this. And that's not a conspiracy theory other than Bill Gates is a conspirator in saying that he thinks we should have less people on the planet. I know this is long-winded, but it's a really huge question. Why are they doing? What's the end goal? Reducing the population. The scariest aspect to me is, like I said, they intentionally want to annihilate most of our species. Why do I say that? Well, the response to Ukraine is very telling to me. Because anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together who has not been indoctrinated in a cult or has any semblance of intelligence would understand that if NATO goes to war with Russia, there is a high probability of nuclear weapons being deployed. Why do I say that? 2 nuclear powers really haven't gone head-to-head since nukes became a thing. It's all been proxy wars. And if that occurs, What do you think is going to happen when 12, 20 plus nations start pounding on Russia, start invading Russia, start bombarding Russia, and they start buckling? Okay. What do you think is going to happen? At a certain point, you get desperate. Okay. Why do you think the war in Ukraine even happened? They were getting desperate because Ukraine was trying to join NATO, which directly threatens their security. Whether this is totally separate from once Russia decided to invade Ukraine and the horrible atrocities. I'm saying that is why it's happening. Okay. You invade Russia, NATO's involved. Russia's going to get its ass kicked fairly quickly. What I mean by that is it's going to be a back and forth, right? Their losses on both sides are going to be harsh or severe, but ultimately, I don't think Russia can really go against NATO because America is in it. America is in it, and America is a major superpower, probably the only true superpower. America get involved with our technology, our warships, our aircraft, our missiles. Russia is going to hurt. And at the end of the day, what do they have to lose if they're going to lose everything? It is highly possible that they can start launching low yield tactical nukes on battlefields, on military bases. They can use, EMP attacks. There's all kinds of things. Russia has better hypersonic missiles than America does. That got revealed in this Ukraine war. Everyone's like, oh, they have hypersonic missiles, and we barely even, hear about it on the news because it's not really, the news isn't really there to inform you. It's there to indoctrinate you, like legacy media anyway. But my point is, America's still developing hypersonic missiles. Like, we have prototypes, while Russia had full production ones that they just deployed in Ukraine and fucked them up. And who knows? I don't know. A couple years behind, 5 years behind. China and Russia both have stealth jets, sixth generation. I believe it's sixth generation jets. Well, equal power, if not more maneuverable and powerful than our F-22 Raptors and F-35s, which are it's too costly to be reasonable. And America's working on. Maybe I have the generations too far. It might be 6th gen or 7th gen jets. But again, it's just like we always assume, based on Western propaganda, based on American propaganda, that Russia and China and these other adversarial nations are just, oh, they have all this old Soviet era tech and, they could never possibly be a threat. And it's like, dude, you are not paying attention. So I know that was super long-winded, but end goal, reduce the population, whether through war, extreme war, a world war, and with, abortion and birth control and abstinence. Well, I don't know about abstinence. People are going to fool around regardless, but encourage people not to have children. War. Guilt them into it by, climate change and stuff. Less people means it's easier for them to control. Okay, if you have a city or town of 1,000 people, and you have, let's say, 50. Well, let's be honest. You have a town of 1,000 people. You probably are going to have about 10 local police, which would be sheriff deputies. But if something goes down, the townsfolk are angry. Angry townsfolk, civilians, versus trained police or military is going to be a lot easier to control than tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, a million. At a certain point, no amount of police or military is going to stop, millions of angry people. You don't even have to get to millions, to be honest, if you want to take a town or a city. Tens of thousands, you probably don't even need 100,000. Okay. So Steven says, my daughter had an assignment on Freud. They linked to a web page with a picture of a a stone carving of male genitalia, and I would ask, how old was your daughter during this assignment or for this assignment? Like how old, what grade? Because that's shocking. That's definitely shocking. Um, Even in middle school, I don't think that would be appropriate. If you're in high school, it's like, okay, well, if you're looking at art or something, like, okay, but yeah, it's a little weird. I would call that weird at the very least. But that's what we're talking about with, the grooming thing is they kind of slip stuff in and pretend like nobody's going to notice or like, what's the problem? What's the problem? And absolutely, you absolutely should confront the school about it because these are your kids, and if you love your kids, you will do everything in your power to protect them. Absolutely critical. And again, what does this have to like? That's not a conservative value, right? Now, yeah, you might be as a conservative a little bit more upset or shocked or appalled at certain topics that are taught in school when a more liberal person would be like, well, they got to kind of learn this stuff early, and it's like it's a worldview difference. Okay, I think there is plenty of space for conversation and compromise and making things work. However, what's happened now is this is a just complete controlled demolition of society. This is there is no way that you're going to convince me that these people are not doing this intentionally. Now, I would say that the average person who follows the left and far left ideology um, has no clue what the end goal will be or the end result is because they don't think that far ahead. Okay, some people do. Some people are really good at critical thinking and cause and effect kind of things. Excuse me. And they can see that, yeah, if we do this, then this will be the result. I just think a lot of this stuff is just so obviously evil, and I when I say the term evil, when I say something is evil, I mean it is the absolutely worst, abhorrent type of behavior. Okay, what's happening to the civilians in Ukraine is evil. Okay, I think we can all agree that a person minding their own business in their own country, whoever killed them, decided that they were going to go into this town and just start shooting people. They're going to torture them. They were going to rape them. They were going to loot their homes, pillage. That's evil. It's also evil that America has killed tens of millions of babies. Okay? And let me, I have to stop and look this up. I want all-time numbers. How many babies have been killed in America? Since legal abortion since 73. Okay. This goes all the way back to 73. This metric was in the hundreds of thousands. Can we get a total? Oh my gosh, this doesn't give you a total. Okay, let's just be very clear on this. Every year, there has been at least 600,000 since 73. So And then from 90, let's see, so from 1980 to 1997, there was over a million abortions. The peak was 1990. There was 1.4 million abortions in that year. Okay. That's genocide. Okay. We're talking about history will look back at this period. And I really do believe this. They're going to look back at this period and say that this was a genocide, that this was population control, and that this was widely accepted because and sold as women's rights because somehow women can spontaneously create a baby by themselves. Therefore, it is entirely their body, and whatever happens is irrelevant. It's their body, so they can do whatever they want with their body, up to and including murdering their own child that's growing inside of them. Miss Red Badger, hello. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see the metric I'm looking at. Okay. Statistica.com. These are abortion statistics going from 2019 all the way down to 1973. Again, there is no year that is less than 600,000 abortions. Okay. But we peaked in the 90s at 1.4 million abortions. So I'm really bad at math. I could sit here and add all of these up, but 1980 to we're well over 20,000, or I'm sorry, 20 million. This is well over 20 million killed. Okay, I would say this is 25 to 30 million babies that America has legally allowed to be murdered. And I also want to preface, like, I understand people have different views on abortion, and there are certain aspects where, yeah, exigent circumstance, like the mother's gonna die, she has like a deformity in her uterus or something, and it's just gonna kill her, and or something with the baby is in a certain position, and it's just like you kill the baby or the mother will die in childbirth. It's like to me it's a hard one, and I understand people's differing views on it, but I've basically my conclusion has gotten to the point now where I'm just like I can't really think of a scenario where you would murder somebody else to save someone else's life. Like, I'm trying to justify that in my head, ethically, morally, and I just, it doesn't square with me. Now, I understand mercy killings, right? I understand that concept. You're putting somebody out of their misery. You're putting that animal out of its misery. But like severe deformity, you're like born with cyclops or a beak or something, like, that shit happens, and you typically you're born with like no skin or something. That stuff happens, and it's just you're born into pure agony for a couple of hours, a couple of days, sometimes a couple of weeks, and then the newborn dies. Okay, well, I personally would feel that there are, that would be one of them circumstances. Like, there's no way you're going to have a quality of life. You're not going to live past a couple of days, and it's kind of like that would be mercy, versus you're a fully healthy infant child, and these sickos think that it's okay to kill them. Now, I understand the federal law prevents partial birth abortions. Basically, you to full term, you bring a baby to full term, and as you're giving birth to it, you can induce birth, but as they're giving birth, they murder the child as it's halfway out. They kill it in a horrible, grotesque way. Which, if you're interested in knowing that procedure, you're more than welcome to look it up. There's just some things, like, after a while, you just, having to describe horror gets to you when you've seen it, when you understand it, and you just kind of like, I don't really feel like getting into that detail, but you're more than welcome to look that stuff up because it's completely legal. Apparently, it's not murder to do that. So, but listen, the immediate a lot of this stuff are things you can't necessarily control right now in your life. You can put political pressure for some of these things to prevent them. But the immediate thing you can do, especially if you have children, is to protect them in any way possible. Don't make excuses. I understand that times are hard. Don't let that be an excuse for you now because, for the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we just kind of been like, oh, hey, little Timmy, how was school today? And you're just like, the parent is like reading a newspaper, not really caring, or it's just like a response, auto response. Oh, today we learned about the birds and the bees. And they're like, oh, that's nice. And, now, 2022, it's like, oh, yeah, we learned about the birds and the bees, and they actually showed us, pictures and videos of what the anatomy looks like. And you're like, the kid is in first grade or something. And it's like, that sounds extreme, but they're working up to that. Let's be very clear about that. This stuff doesn't just come out of a vacuum. Like one day they're just like, we're gonna teach them that it's okay for adult pedophiles to touch them in the corner of the classroom. It's like, no, this stuff slowly builds and builds and builds. So what they're doing now is they'll be showing like these drawings, these like cartoon drawings, or like medical drawings, how they're nice, they're pretty decent sketches where you understand that this is, what it's supposed to be. And they're putting that in these kids' books, and we're like, oh, this is what we're showing in class now. And it's like, age appropriate is everything. Age appropriate is everything, right? I remember I was a very small child, and I was looking at a medical textbook, like a college level medical textbook, and there were certain medical drawings in it, and I was just like, even as a small child, I was just like, ooh, what's that? And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing to be exposed to that, but there's a way to do it. There's always there's a difference of being classy and tactful and being age appropriate, and just like, oh yeah, we just have a different worldview, and we think that your kids should learn about sex and what it means to be gay and all. It's like, they don't even understand basic mathematics. They don't even know how to read and write properly, and they're teaching these kids so young now that you could have two daddies, or this is what the two daddies do together, and it's like, why are you intentionally sexually confusing children? Unless you are a groomer, you are a sex pervert, you are a pedophile, you're an ebophile, or whatever the different terms are. Hebophile, ebophile, pedophile, whatever it may be. It's just like, something's wrong with these people. They're fucked in the head, and they're pretending that they're not. It's demonic behavior, and they're slowly inching their way to their end goal of just, there are no rules, just chaos. Anything goes. That's how I see this. And I think it's like, it's a controlled demolition of society, in the sense of, they're slowly doing it. When they have the institutional power, they can do it like that. But if they snap their finger and just all of a sudden all these end goal things happen, you're going to have a shock reaction. The frog in the pot situation. If the water was, let's say it was like less than room temperature, let's say it was like 50 degrees or something, and they just snap, somehow the water's instantly boiling, 200 plus degrees, 200, 250 degrees, whatever the boiling point of water is at sea level. We all jumping out of the pot like, okay, we're getting the fuck out of here, something's wrong, the house is on fire, but they're just like slowly burning the house down from the corner, and there's smoke, but they're blowing a fan around, so it's just kind of blending in the air, and it's slowly getting more and more smoky, and you just don't really realize it because these people aren't stupid. They're not retarded. They know exactly what's happening, exactly what they're doing, and they know the only way that they're going to get away with this stuff is if they slowly groom not only the children but adults in society to make these things socially acceptable. So we're in a dangerous place because I feel I am threatened by what's been happening because I strongly believe there's been a lot of progress in society, racial progress, sex progress in the sense of like male, females have gotten equal rights, non-white people have gotten equal rights, gay people for the most part have gotten equal rights, and we were in a good spot, right? We're in a good sweet spot. We can have a debate about gay marriage. I don't think marriage should really be a thing anyway. Like that's between you and the church. Should have nothing to do with the government. I don't believe in marriage, period, in the sense of you have to go to the courthouse to get your marriage certified by the government. Like that's totally different thing. But for me, I feel threatened because when you push people too quickly, too far, and it is inherently evil, the things that are happening, the things that people are pushing for, it goes completely against their morals, their ethics, their worldview, their fundamental beliefs. There's going to be violent pushback. I am surprised, legitimately surprised, that people have not been snapping over the whole like transgender insanity that's been happening, like violently snapping. What's interesting to me though is I guess these leftists are so good at infiltrating. They're really good at being sneaky, conniving, slithery little demonic creatures. I don't know how else to call it. Because they were able to take over almost every major institution in America, and they have a controlling voice, or it's perceived as a controlling voice because everyone's afraid to speak out. And I'm not even just talking like most. If you ask most people, they're typically are like, I don't really care about gay people. Like they don't really affect me. I'm not gay. As long as they're not messing with me, I'm not going to mess with them. That's the mentality. That's the general American mentality that it has been. I'm an American. I'm free to do what I want to do as long as I'm not harming other people. That's the general mindset we've had. But now it's switching towards, for some reason, these leftists, these authoritarians want to control what you do instead of, it kind of used to be, yeah, you can kind of bend a little bit. Okay, you're in the cities. Cities are a little wild, like we get it. But people in the suburbs and in the rural areas were, a lot more conservative and able to do their own thing too. Now they're trying to force people everywhere to believe what they believe. You have to sleep with this trans woman because I am a woman. It's like, dude, you have a dick and balls. Like, excuse me. Like, I know that's rude to say that like that, but and graphic, but these people are literally advocating for this and pushing for this and saying that you're a bigot, you're a transphobe if you won't have sex with me. It's like, dude, you are a male, a fully intact male. This is a straight male. Why would you think a straight male would be interested in that? He wants a female. It's just like obvious things. It's obvious. But very few people want to speak up because they're afraid. They know that there's ramifications. Well, I'm going to lose my job. Well, there's a social pressure. Oh, my family won't talk to me if whatever. Oh, my bank my bank will shut down my account. I get it. There are consequences, but I guarantee you the average American citizen is not down with this stuff. And if you were to somehow flip a switch in their head to convince them to speak up and stand up, it'd be 75% plus. Easily. We'd just be like, Yeah, I'm for equal rights, but this isn't about equal rights anymore. This is about the survival of our country because these people are just going insane. There's a town in California that is going to be paying a stipend to transgender people. Just here's money because you're trans. It's like there's places where you get stipends for being black, as like some kind of a reparations deal, even though these people were never slaves. Their parents were never slaves. Their grandparents were never slaves. And probably their great grandparents were also not slaves. But somehow they're getting paid for something that happened 150 years ago to their ancestors. I Okay, we can have that. It's just like there's so many different things happening all at once that it's kind of hard to say that they're not doing this intentionally. Brandon Hoskins says, I'm 44. I remember learning about sex in seventh grade. To me, it seems like the right time when your body starts changing, which is fair. That's been traditional anyway. The problem now is, and there's an argument to be had here, a conversation, puberty is happening younger and younger in children, and that has to do with the chemicals in our food, and that's basically it. The chemicals in our food are altering people's bodies. And, you have people going through puberty at 10, at 9 even. And I mean, puberty blockers were used originally in extreme conditions. Like an 8-year-old should not be going through puberty, so it's like, all right, let's go ahead and get you on this chemical, this drug, and wait until you're about 11, 12, and then we'll take you off of it, and hopefully your body adjusts and continues the process. But yeah, it's obvious. Like I was in fifth grade when we first had it here in Virginia. What is that, like 10, 11, 12? Yeah, it was fifth grade, so yeah, it was like 10 or 11. That might have been too early, it might not have. I don't know. It was definitely awkward. It was uncomfortable. It was very weird because you just don't want to talk about stuff like that sometimes. Like I was very self-aware at a very young age. I was always more mature than my classmates, years at advance than them. So everyone's like joking like retards about, oh, he said penis, and I'm just like, you're making this way more awkward than it needs to be. Like I just want to learn this, get over it. Like okay, I need to learn certain terms and certain processes, and like let me get through this. And these fuckers are making it worse. And I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, now imagine that I was like 10, 11 years old. Imagine how much more awkward it could be for a small child. Now, let's be clear here. The younger you are, the easier it is because they don't know any better. When you get to a certain age, you're going to have more embarrassment and shame and stuff because you've lived longer, you had more experiences, and you could see social cues from adults. Like certain topics, they start blushing or they start getting angry about it, and they're like, no, we're not talking about this. Oh, shield their eyes. When you're younger, you don't necessarily understand that yet. So it's easier for them to groom these kids, and that's exactly what they're doing. So I would say use language as a weapon, just like the left and far left have been doing, you know. And I do hate that it's down to this. Like we're in a civil war. Just right now, it's a fifth generational war, meaning it's purely informational. There has been some physical skirmishes here and there. The far left versus the far right. Antifa versus Proud Boys or something. And a couple of Trump supporters have been shot. There's all these different little violent flare-ups, but for the most part, it's a fifth generational war. And the moderates, the centrists, and conservatives have been losing. This one thing, this groomer thing, has been starting to see an upside for moderates and conservatives. They're winning that one. And as long as people keep up the pressure, they're going to win because this is what's happening. Essentially, whatever one side does, the other one says the opposite, and that goes for conservatives too. There have been plenty of things that conservatives were just automatically doing the opposite of because just for the sake of it. And you're like, dude, come on, let's be more mature than this. But the left is doing it in the extreme degree that now they're saying that not even traditional, how do I word this, right? Because traditional and conservative are kind of, synonymous with each other. I wouldn't even, calling it traditional society just gives it the wrong connotation. It is just like baseline society, and baseline culture and social norms. That is conservative now. So the left and the liberals are like, well, this is what conservatives are doing, so I have to do the opposite. And it's like, well, the right wants to protect kids, and they don't want creeps and pedos messing with their kids. Well, that's not really happening. But if it was, maybe it's okay that it's maybe they have a mental illness or there's some condition on why these people are attracted to kids. And pedophile is offensive, so let's call them minor attracted persons. It's like if we leave them alone, or I won't even say leave them alone, on the current track that we're at, right? It's going to be very clear dividing lines on you're either with evil, and I mean that, and I know that's shocking, right? I'm calling the left and Democrats evil. They are bringing themselves to that point, right? They are pushing themselves into that extreme because, again, they want to be just contrarian and they want to be the ones in control of everything. And even if that means being wrong and evil, the conservatives and people who are not on their side directly have to always be wrong to them, so they have to do the opposite. That's why they keep escalating this stuff. And 5-10 years, I was just about to say, in 5 or 10 years, expect pedophilia to be legal. And I just remembered a story. I was saying it. There's a place somewhere in California, I think, there is already a law in the books where it's not pedophilia. It's basically, it's ebophilia or hebophilia, whatever the one is, like a teenager, right? Where in the gay community specifically, I shit you not, this is a real thing. I don't know if it's LA or San Francisco, or it's probably San Francisco, specifically to that city. If you are a gay male, it's okay for you to have sex with a minor boy because you're gay and that's just your culture. If they're like 14 or something, like, oh, it's okay. But if you're straight, you're heterosexual, 18 or older. It's like, wait, wait a minute. And this damages me. This makes me feel unsafe because me, as a bisexual man, I feel like, again, these extreme things reflect poorly on everyone who it is that thing. And it's a problem with stereotypes. It's reality, though. People are going to see this and they're going to start associating all of these negative things with, a fundamental part of me that I try not to, I don't officially associate with, meaning like, I don't go to these gatherings and parades and stuff. I did go to one years ago. It was in my local area. I covered it. But that's just not me. It's a one of the least important aspects of my life. But it threatens me because, everyone who knows me knows that aspect. And if we start regressing backwards in time as far as like society, we have this snapback, right? It's like a pendulum swinging. Right now we're on the extreme to the left, and then it's going to go to the extreme right as a quick snapback because people are just shocked at just how evil and depraved things have been. they're gonna shoot back in the opposite direction, and that means that I'm in jeopardy. So I'm just like, listen, I think most of us agree, you don't mess with kids, you leave kids alone, and you need to stop making excuses for criminals, whether it be sex criminals, whether it be pedophiles, whether it be people who are robbing, looting, stealing, rioting, whatever. Stop making excuses for bad behavior and come back to reason and sanity. Um, a side note, slightly different, but related to Ukraine in World War III. I've been on the Ukraine subreddit, and it is a shit show. It is nothing but anti-Russian propaganda, and it's really interesting watching. You can learn very quickly. 5 minutes. You just scroll through what's on their feed. Everything is anti. There are people who have personal tags like "fuck Russia" and "Russia kill all Russians," and I'm serious. There are titles to post. I hope all Russians eat dicks and die, or just. I'm not even joking. This is a major subreddit. There are millions of people on it, and if the inverse were happening, right? Imagine if there was a major event, world event, and there was a major subreddit. Just even this. Let's say there was a Russia subreddit where they were saying the opposite, kill all Ukrainians or something hypothetical like that. That subreddit would be shut down immediately. In fact, I believe the Russia subreddit or anything that's connected with Russia was shut down. You're not allowed to have a Russian perspective. And it's interesting because I keep having to tell people I have no interest in Russia. I have no attachment to Russia. I think Russia is the government is a bad government. It's basically it's a dictatorship. Essentially, it's ruled by autocrats and aristocrats. Essentially, and so I have no love for it. But I'm criticizing the narrative that's being presented because we only see the Western narrative. We only see the Ukrainian. We only see the Europe. We only see the American narrative. And any deviation from that is met with immediate hostility. And I can name multiple things like anyone that deviated from the official narrative of 9/11 immediately was attacked. Okay? And this isn't even just saying like you don't necessarily you're just questioning certain little things here and there. Hold on one second. I'll be right. Where was I at? I was talking about Ukraine subreddit and stuff. So, all right, just thinking where I was at. I was talking about how basically you question 9/11, like what was going on. You don't even have to dive into the most absurd things like, oh, the planes were holograms or any questioning. Like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, no plane hit building number 7. Like, why did it collapse like it was a controlled demolition? That's a little weird. You could tell there was some fires on it, but it didn't really. Just basic questioning, and you're immediately labeled like anti-patriotic, and you're batshit insane. You're a moron. You're retarded. Whatever. That's what's happening now with the Russian-Ukraine situation. any questioning of the official narrative of what they're claiming is happening in Ukraine. And I've had people, close friends, who are like, "That's a Russian talking point," and they got like really like stodgy and like aggressive all of a sudden. I'm like, wait, wait, wait. I'm like, oh, wait, calm down, calm down. I'm asking a question, which I think is a fair question. I don't remember specifically what I was questioning, but that's where we are. It's like every time these major events happen, the political class jump on it immediately because never let a good crisis go to waste. And some people go to the extreme that think everything is fake, meaning like they think everything is like a Hollywood production. They think there's no mass shootings, it's all fake props and fake blood, and no one actually died. And it's like that's just extreme. That's extreme. I've seen no evidence of that. There have been a couple of times where it's like, yeah, they're doing these what are they call crisis stage crisis events or whatever, emergency response trainings and stuff like that. And they'll use, Hollywood special effects, fake blood and fake wounds and stuff. But listen, 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 listen. If we're not even able to question basic things happening in the world, in our reality, and they're presenting one perspective, they're presenting one perspective, then you start questioning because you're like, you're telling me this thing, or you're showing me a picture or a video of this thing that happened, but you're unable to really what you're explaining doesn't make sense, and I'm asking questions for clarification, and you're immediately like, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? That sounds like something Russia would say, and you're like, whoa, dude, like calm the fuck down. I'm asking you a basic question. Again, I have no love for the Russian government. But there are so many things that don't make sense. They keep saying that like Ukraine is winning, and they're utterly. I saw one news report, it was like CBC, CNBC, or somebody, NBC. Somebody posted that 40,000 Russian troops were killed, and I just scream loud. I was like, "Fuck off!" Like, you're not gonna convince me that the second most powerful government military in the world, going into a smaller, lesser country, lesser in the sense of like population and technology and stuff like that, and economic ability, that they sent the full weight of their military into this country, and that they lost 40,000 troops. Fuck off. Like, I'm sorry. You're not. It's absurd. And then I saw other reports are like being slightly more reasonable. Oh, 14,000 Russian troops killed. It's like, I could believe that if it's a full-fledged invasion, full-fledged war. It's very possible. And they have, modern weapons in Ukraine. They've been funded and armed by NATO and, NATO countries. Sure, it's possible. And Russia, for some weird reason, has been sending in a lot of old weapons and machinery, and knowing full well that they have, a enormous, enormous stockpile of tanks, the world's largest stockpile of tanks, like 12,000 tanks. Um, they have a decent air force. They have, again, they have the nuclear capabilities. They have nuclear torpedoes. They have the most advanced, in my opinion, I think they have the most advanced nuclear submarine. It's also the largest in the world. They're not just some cheap pushover nation that just happens to be the largest nation in the world. I don't understand this mindset, and it's kind of like you have to question things. And again, it doesn't mean that the narrative that they're pushing is necessarily just a lie, but you still need to question it, because I need somebody to explain it to me. First of all, Ukraine isn't in the middle of nowhere, right? Yeah, it's the backwaters of Europe, right? You call it Eastern Europe, and some people are like, well, it's not really Europe because, it's former Soviet bloc. It's like, okay, you know what I'm saying. The point is, they have modern cities, had many of. I'm not trying to be rude, but they're in war and they've been reduced to rubble and ash. But modern cities, modern tech, they have cars and just like everything that they were a second world nation, meaning they're on par with, for the most part, the rest of Europe and stuff, developed, almost entirely developed. They didn't get to like first world status to where I have no clue who that is. Oh, I do. Hold on one sec. Um, what was I saying? Oh, Ukraine. So, my biggest question out of all of this Ukraine thing is why isn't there more video, more cell phone video? And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm asking a serious question. They said about 25% of Ukraine has evacuated. So a couple million people have left for surrounding nations. But we're in 2022. They are a modern nation, essentially. And why is there only a couple dozen videos here and there? What are we missing? And again, it's just I'm really confused here. So why aren't we seeing more battles? Like we've seen a couple of videos of troops, and we hear gunfire in the distance. You might see some battle, but very very limited, extremely limited, and you have no clue what's happening. It's literally just like, oh, a battle happened today, and this was the losses on this. Russian lost 100 vehicles and 300 men or something, and you're just like, okay, but again, not trying to be rude, but show me the evidence. Like, show me the battlefield, show me the bodies, show me. Yeah, we see images of a lot of vehicles burnt out and blown up and stuff. And it was like, okay, that's something I could look at. And I'm not trying to be rude. Like, I don't necessarily want to see the dead bodies, but they're clearly exaggerating. They're magnifying whatever's happening, threefold, if not more. And it's very hard to really understand what's going on there. Miss Red Badger says, I found old vid about international CP bust. And guess who was mentioned? The Azov group out of Ukraine. Surprise, such a small world caught in the net. Then you found several vids about biological labs in Ukraine from years ago. Yes. But see, this is interesting. Actually, thank you for bringing that up. I almost did an entire video on this yesterday. I posted it on my feed. So if you go to community tab, I shared this out yesterday. 16 hours ago, I said this has got to be the most embarrassingly absurd news report I've ever seen. They're defending the Nazis in Ukraine. What the fuck is happening? And this is a BBC report about Ukraine's Nazis. This is what I'm going to do. I wonder if I could even show this, because they'll try to copyright it immediately. Damn. Okay, I'll tell you what. I will copy the link. I will post it in chat. And then I highly recommend that you watch this. Watch this video. And here, I'll pin it. That is a YouTube video from some guy. I don't know that he's connected with it. He has 158,000 subscribers, but it's a BBC report. It says he's an investigative journalist from Mumbai. Anyway, he's sharing a BBC report. And in this BBC report, they basically excuse the Nazis in Ukraine. This is from March 25th, 2022. That's when this guy posted it. I don't know that it's the actual thing. So again, I don't think I can actually, I could share screen real quick, but I don't think I could play it. Because you know how this crap works. There's been a couple times I shared a clip from a movie. It was like a 1 minute clip and it cut my stream off. It ended the stream. This is just so you know what you're looking at. It's going to look like this. So, yeah, basically what happened in the video is they're going through it, Putin, Putin propaganda, Russian propaganda has basically been saying that, there are all these Nazis in Ukraine. They're saying that all these Nazis in Ukraine, and, basically it's overblown. And in the news report, they admit that there is a Nazi problem, a far-right fascist Nazis, neo-Nazi problem in Ukraine. Like actual Nazis. They even use terms like, and I quote, actual Nazis. They're like, oh, it's only like 10-20% that are of Azov that are actual Nazis. And I'm just like, what? Like I paused the video and I'm like audibly screamed what? Like they had the audacity in this news report on BBC to be like, oh, it's only like 10-20% of Azov Battalion are actual Nazis. Like it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, bro, is this really happening right now? For 10 years, especially in America, hyper-focused in America, there has been this extreme push to have this fear and resentment and immediate action against far-right Nazism in America. Like somehow there are Nazis everywhere. When actual government polls and government numbers are like, there's probably like 5,000 neo-Nazis that, actually neo-Nazis. And then you can scale it up a little bit to peripheral groups that have sympathies, strong sympathies towards neo-Nazis. But it was less than 50,000 people with any kind of connection, like far-right connection. Most people are moderates. If Richard Spencer, who wasn't even a neo-Nazi, he was just kind of pseudo-fascist, okay? He was a peripheral Nazi. The way he was attacked for it, these are actual neo-Nazis. Imagine skinheads with swastikas on, fighting in an official capacity in Ukraine's military, and the world, Western world, America, BBC, whatever. Oh, don't worry about that. Yeah, they're Nazis. They're literally Nazis, and like, yeah, we know. Like that they're wearing 3 different Nazi symbols, 3 different SS symbols on their uniform. Those are Nazis. Yeah, it's like 10-20% of them are Nazis. Like, don't worry about it. It's fine. They have no like real power, or they have that's also in the report. They don't really have any political power or anything like that. Like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I'm just like, it was the most shocking news report I've ever seen in my life. They are literally defending Nazism in Ukraine for the simple reason. 2 reasons actually. The one of the main leaders in Ukraine, military leaders, they're showing a video clip and then translating. He's just like, Azov are our best fighters. So the Nazi militants who are they're a battalion of Nazis working as official military in Ukraine. They are our best fighters. Okay, so because they fight well, it's okay. And basically, because they're at war with Russia, there's, we need people to fight. That's the excuse. And my thing is like this. Like, I get it. I get it. I get it. Your country got invaded, and I've talked about this before. I've talked about this before. If your country is invaded, you do whatever you can, man. I'm not even gonna fault people. And people talk about war crimes and abuse of prisoners. I'm like, listen, if I don't care who it is, Zimbabwe invaded America, if aliens invaded America, if Great Britain invaded America, it's going to be hard for you to convince me to feel sorry for any troop that stepped foot on American soil to do us harm. It's going to be nasty. It would be nasty. It'd be brutal. You got captured. You're probably going to get strung up on bridges, on lamp posts, and A, it sucks, but you invaded our country with the intent of killing us. I totally get that. So Ukraine's reaction to Russia invading them, I get it. I get it. It sucks. All this sucks. It's horrible. It's war. It's hell. Okay? But you're never going to convince me that if some major international conflict happens where America is involved, a war, and we have foreign invaders coming, and the government was just like, well, I got 10,000 Klansmen, a battalion of Klansmen, okay, or a regiment, whatever's higher than that, that's high. A battalion of Klansmen and 2 battalions of neo-Nazis, and I got some some other far-right dudes over here, and we're going to give them military equipment and guns and weapons and vehicles, and it's just like, well, go fuck up, whoever the invader is. Like, you're never going to convince me that I'm ever going to be okay with that. And ask me why. Why would I never be okay with that? The war will not last forever. What you've just done is you've given them official, I can't think of the word. You just validated them. Yeah, you've given them official validation. You have said it's okay to be a neo-Nazi. It's okay to be a Klansman. And the government just gave them official validation, gave them a gun, gave them flags, like you're wearing our nation's flag, and go kill the enemy. Okay, great. So when the war is over, guess what happens? Are they going to give their guns away? They're going to give their military equipment away? Maybe they just take off their uniforms and blend into society, but then say, or maybe they're just like, you know what? We like our position now. We like that we have power. And, well, I think we're going to take this territory. They're going to take a little spot here and there. Like, what do? Don't empower Nazis. And I would say the same thing happens, or should be happening, or the same response would be for communists. It's like, come on. It doesn't matter. These people are psychotic extremists with a track record, a historical track record of wherever they went, they spread chaos and destruction. Communists, fascists, both of them were extremely violent, corrosive, and destructive. And I understand some people are, I have some friends that are just like, hey, they're at war, like, these people were willing to fight, and they were in extreme need, so I guess they're arming, letting the Nazis fight on their behalf, and I'm just like, I can't get behind that. I can't get behind that. I understand extreme need, but yeah, once the war is over, then you got to deal with the fucking Nazis that you just empowered. And to pretend like people kept saying, oh, there's only like 2,000 in Azov, and I'm like, okay, there's only 2,000 Nazis in the Azov battalion. Okay, but here's the thing. I keep seeing reports pop up everywhere about Azov battalion, like official legacy media reports. I'm not talking about, things that could be questionably like Russian propaganda, because of course they're everyone's putting out propaganda, but I'm talking about like BBC, ABC, CNN, and Azov Battalion was here at the maternity hospital bombing, shelling, and stuff like it. You could just see it. I'm like, are you sure it's only 2,000? Like, Ukraine's a big country. Ukraine is not territorially. It's big compared. Let's look at Ukraine compared to America, like a side by side. It's big. It's like the equivalent of 3 or 4 American states. I don't know how accurate this one is, but we'll go with this. Let me just share the screen real quick. That's not what I meant to do. There you go. It's big, right? It's like the size of Texas. If you're like looking at it geographically, it's a huge area of land. Okay, so keep that in mind. Listen, I don't know what's going on in Ukraine. I know that people are dying. I know that it's hell there, um, but they are basically trying to push us towards World War III. Zelensky is begging for NATO assistance with money, with ammunition, with armaments, military vehicles, military hardware and planes and all that stuff. Missiles, even. They're asking for, like, which missiles are not defensive, they're offensive at that point. So, listen, it just seems inevitable that Ukraine is going to escalate into World War III. I honestly, I don't see how we get out of this. How do we get out of this? And I honestly don't know. Like, people, obviously people have been speculating about, well, with Putin is removed from the equation, assassination, imprisonment, his own people rise up, whatever. Like, how would that affect things? Well, it would dramatically affect things. Okay, one person not being there to one dictator removed. Well, he's the one who's causing a huge portion of what's been happening. Okay, you remove him out of the equation, while Ukraine is liberated. Ukraine gets liberated. The next thing is, well, who replaces Putin? Is Putin going to be replaced by another tyrant, or is it going to be a Western puppet? Because let's be very clear about this: the Russian people are not 100% united behind one leader, just like most of these nations are. Like, if we were having a similar situation in America, and a leader gets removed, we have, by law, written, codified into law, what the secession of leadership is. But in Russia, it's not so clear cut. I mean, people can seize power. It does happen. And I'm not saying it can't happen in America too, but Russia's not a democracy. Well, either way, Russia's not a republic. It's not a republic in the real sense. And so it's very possible that they just get replaced with another tyrant. If Let's be very clear, if you have occupying forces in Russia, something happens and they're just like, we're going to invade. let's be very clear on what will happen still. To pretend like taking out Putin is just eliminating the so-called Russian threat is a lie. You're lying to yourselves if you think that will happen. Okay? You're lying to yourself if you think that's going to happen. There's still other high-level Russian people in leadership who will still defend Russia. They're not just going to be like, well, Putin's dead, so America could send in 10,000 troops into Moscow to occupy it, and Europe and NATO and all these other tens of thousands of troops, just send them in, and we're going to restructure Russia. Like, that'll never happen. It'll never happen. Just because Putin isn't in power doesn't mean Russia is still not a military threat. So be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. Uh, Even assassinating Putin is an act of war, and it's very possible that that could cause World War III. Okay? This stuff is not like clear cut as some other topics. It is very international politics, geopolitics is not a simple thing. It is very complicated. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Another thing we need to talk about, like desperately need to talk about, is America is on track to not be the sole superpower anymore. Okay, and that comes with consequences. The consequence of that is economically we're going to be suffering long term. Like our standard of living is going to go down. Now the question is, are we going to maintain this first world status that we are basically the only major nation, only real nation that has first world status, as far as I'm convinced? I mean, there's some reports that some metrics are saying like even Canada, like you think, oh, Canada's first world, they're classifying it as second world. It's still developing to get to where America is. Okay. Whether you agree with that or not, the point is the standard of living that you have in America right now is going bye-bye. And it's going bye-bye very quickly. It's already been on the decline since they artificially shut down the economy, halted the economy because of, COVID fear, COVID hysteria. And the economic ramifications are still being felt. It's getting to the point now, there's so many different factors stacking on top of each other that it's impossible to tell what's causing what anymore. We know there's certain things that are affecting different things, but it's getting so crazy so fast that trying to explain stuff to people is like kind of like what's happening now. It takes me 2 hours to explain where we're at. It's not something I could be like, I can explain this in 5 minutes or less. Go. No, it's super complicated. I say Canada, yeah. We can actually look this up real quick. I have time. List of first world nations. Now, this changes. This changes from time to time. There's a lot of sources. World Population Review, nationsonline.org, investopedia.com. First, let's get into the definition just briefly. First world consists of U.S., Western Europe, and their allies. Second world, so-called communist bloc, Soviet Union, China, Cuba, friends. Remaining third world are assigned. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that definition because it's a economic status, not just your alliances. Fourth world nation would be a diaspora or a completely displaced nation. So I totally forgot about fourth world. fourth world nation is like Palestinians, essentially. They just dispersed. They don't have a homeland anymore because it's been just conquered. It's been annihilated, essentially. It would be like gypsies. Gypsies have no home country. They're a fourth world nation. Yeah, that's fourth world. Let's see. Let me just click on one of these. Can you show me a list of first world? Oh, come on. Countries of the first world. America, Western Europe and their allies, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. Okay, so most of Europe, or at least Western and Central Europe. They say Canada's first world. Okay, fine. Israel, Japan, Korea. Yeah, right. Switzerland, Sweden. Okay. According to this, America is not number one in first world status anymore. Because a lot of this is like economics, economically based, life expectancy, all that stuff. Norway is shown as the highest, then Sweden, then Australia, then Canada. Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. Netherlands, Belgium, Iceland, and then number 8 is a USA. So, okay, maybe I'm just wrong, but understand that you're gonna see a reduction in your lifestyle because you're already seeing it now. Things are getting expensive, and it's not going to be temporary. You know, Biden draining our strategic oil reserve is not going to solve the problem. It's a super temporary fix. It'll lower the prices for a month, you know, or it'll slow the growth of the prices for a month. And then after that reserve is drained and there's nothing else you can do other than just take the full force of inflation, it's gonna skyrocket. So gas prices in my city. It's over $4. So it did go up. It's significant. I mean, that's a month ago 3.86 a gallon. A week ago was 4.10 a gallon. Yesterday was $4.04. Okay, so it went slightly down. Current average is $4.03 in my area. But again, that's temporary, right? And it's only going down a couple cents. Oh, thank you, Biden. You're draining our strategic oil reserves, which is like absolute emergency use kind of thing, for 2 cents off. Thanks. You're really helping me. Really helping me, dude. Um, so yeah, that's gonna last what, a month before that's drained, and then it's gonna start going up again. It could potentially go up to $5 by in May. It could go higher as a average. You know, again, we were speculating before it could go up to $10. At worst case scenario, it could hit $10, which is just like apocalyptic bad. Like you can't afford gas. We're talking about your average little sedan car. It costs $100. Okay, it costs $100 to fill it up. My tiny little Ford Focus hatchback costs about $50 to fully fill up from empty. So I never fill up from empty. I fill up for about a quarter, and that's like last time I filled up was $42 to fill up a Ford Focus hatchback. 3/4 of a tank was $42. That is insane. Yeah, if at a certain point it's kind of like I don't have money and I can't like do stuff. I can't buy things, so which only hurts the economy more. And all these things are connected. All this stuff is important, and it's a chain reaction type of situation, right? We get between 94 and 96% of our fertilizer from Russia, and now that's been cut off. So it's like, okay, well, you're just not going to have fertilizer uh, the following season. Like whatever we already had is it. And then we're gonna. It's like, why aren't we making our own fertilizer? We're America. Like, what the fuck is happening? And Europe too. Most of Europe doesn't really produce its own fertilizer in the same degree. It's like, how does any of this make sense? These are nations that we are supposedly adversarial with, China and Russia, and we're getting some of our most strategic resources from them. When I say strategic, that is a different category from like buying a toy or something. Like it's a non-essential thing. Strategic is we're getting essential things like food, things that are connected with food, medicine, uh, like strategic resources, microchips or something like that. These are like essential things for our country to be maintained. And we are allowing our adversaries, our adversarial nations, to produce them, and we're buying it from them. Why are we not domestically producing these things? I understand if there is like a shortage of raw minerals and elements. Like we don't have the mines, we don't have the actual raw element here in our land, and we have to buy it from another country that does have that resource. I get that. But that's not what's happening. We're talking about like mostly finished products. The things that we absolutely are capable of. Why are we not producing our own fertilizer in America? When I saw the numbers on just how extreme that number was and how little America produces its fertilizer, I just it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Because it lets me know that America is not a serious nation. Okay, we're not a serious nation. We're very short-sighted, and you get these corrupt people in office. Oh, we're going to do a business deal, and hey, you convince the federal government, hey, let's do a business deal with this nation or whatever, and oh, it's a trade deal. Ooh, we're doing great, and people are making money, and it's like, okay, now 10, 20, 30 years later, the economic impact is harming us, and there is no quick fix. Well, all the factories have been shut down. Okay? Y'all shut down the factories. We don't produce much of anything here anymore. And it's like, okay, well, now that we're in emergency time, we're in wartime, like it's inevitable, essentially. It's inevitable that wars. It's inevitable that war is coming. Sorry. There's just like some guy in the middle of the road, and I realized I think he's repairing a pothole or something. I have no clue what he's doing. Anyway, it's like now we're in crisis. We're essentially we're in pre-wartime, when everyone's kind of like, yeah, we're probably going to war. We're probably going to war, and we're not preparing for it in any meaningful way. Well, we're kind of broke, and everyone's still reeling from the economic damage we caused during the COVID hysteria. So we can't really do much, but we'll transgender kids and grooming the kids and just continue aborting babies and we're gonna send guns and bombs and all kinds of stuff to Ukraine because that's somehow keeping us out of the war. I just at a certain point you have to accept that this is a controlled demolition. It's like they are intentionally trying to destroy America. They do not want America to be what it is. And yeah, we've had debates, we've had conversations on this channel before about, maybe America doesn't need to be um, everything that it has been historically. Like, yeah, we don't need to be the world police. I'm okay with America not being the world police. I would prefer the United Nations or something akin to that to be the world police, meaning you have agreed upon consensus from nations working together to say that this thing is bad or this is morally wrong or we need to, peacekeep this region, and they send in troops versus, well, I'm a powerful nation of America or Russia or China, so I'm just going to invade it. I'm just going to send in my troops and do what I want. It's like that needs to stop. Okay, but other things that would dramatically cause harm to the world is if America's economy crashes. It's like, well, the world's economy crashes. Let's be very clear about that. Because of globalism, because of how interconnected everything is. And instead of a lot of these nations, some nations have to import things. They have to do these trade deals for them to survive. Some of these places get a ton of food imported and stuff, and America is not immune from that. But instead of producing food here in the same meaningful way of producing things that we need here, we've exported it, or we've exported the jobs and import the goods. Okay. And that time is coming to an end, or at least is going to be dramatically reduced. And at a certain point, the American dream has always been a dream. Let's be very clear about that. I haven't changed on that position. It's a dream. It's an American dream. It's not real. Okay, it's fantasy. But there was a greater chance of upward mobility economically. Like, you can work hard and you can achieve more. You could buy a house, you can start a family, you can prosper and have a good, decent, fulfilling life. Now we're at the point where, is America a first world nation? Like, maybe I don't understand the definition of what a first world nation is, but my understanding is I should be able to afford to buy a house, a 2-3 bedroom house. That's mine. I own it. I should be able to pay it off in 10 to 20 years. Instead of being able, a house for that has 2 to 3 bedrooms being like $100,000 to $200,000, now they're $400,000, $500,000. It's impossible for me to get a loan. And not just impossible to get a loan, why would I want to spend that money for a house that I know the previous generation got half? They paid half of as much for. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. So let's be very clear on that too. Like, there's gonna be overlap with talking points of some of the things the progressives on the left are saying are valid, and I've noticed there are people on the right who also agree. Typically from my generation, they agree because we're feeling it. We all are like, okay, well, my parents got a house and they're doing just fine, right? Well, how come they're allowed to have a house, but I'm not? When I say allowed, it's because it's like it's impossible. I cannot afford a house. Most of us in my generation cannot afford a house. I know people. Oh my God, how many? 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are married adults. Half of them have kids. and they don't have a house. And when I say they don't have a house, I'm not talking about, oh, they're living in a townhouse, an apartment, or they're renting. I'm talking about they have roommates and they are married, or they're married and they're living in their parents' house. They have a kid and they're living in their parents' house. Like, this is how bad it is, this generation, how bad we have it. And it's just like, at a certain point you need to figure out that we got a bad deal. We got a shit deal. Okay? This is what happened during the Great Depression, is you had families living together because they just, how? Nobody could afford it. I can't buy my own house because we don't have money. There's no jobs. Well, now the problem is we have so many extra jobs, but nobody wants to work them. And our wages, we always use the term the wages have stagnated. It's like, no. The wages don't need to increase. It's that inflation has increased exponentially, and our wages haven't matched that increased inflation. Well, it's like, well, maybe we need to figure out how to stop inflation. It shouldn't be too hard, really. You should be able to reverse it and have deflation. I don't see why that's not possible to look at. But for some reason, my generation is being left to foot the bill, and generation Generation Y, millennials, mine, and then Gen Z, we're both suffering, and we're just like, Gen Z just completely gave up. And I'm serious about that. Gen Z just completely gave up. They're the biggest generation that just refuses to work. I don't know what those numbers are. I would love to see polling on that, but the people least likely to work are like elderly, 75, 80-year-olds, people who shouldn't have been working anyway. Them and like millennial and Gen Zs, they just don't want to work. They don't want to work. Part of it has to do with, the cultural influences, the indoctrination, the cultural, generational indoctrination. Every generation has its own like theme, right? The generation during the 50s was like, work hard and you can achieve what I have, and it's just like, that's great. That's great, but that's not reality for this generation. This generation, we have nothing. Nothing compared to the last. I know some people who don't even drive. Like, some of them have licenses, but they're like, I can't afford a car. I can't afford the maintenance on it. And they figure out ways around it. And I don't live in a place with good public transportation. They get rides from friends, or, Uber is a lot cheaper than a taxi. It's about half as much, taking Ubers and Lyfts and stuff. But uh, this is reality, and you better get used to it. Better get used to it. And the sad part is, there are tens of millions of empty homes. Tens of millions of empty homes, and there are so many people who can't achieve owning one. It's just, we don't have the money. It's just not possible. And I don't know how you fix that. There is no easy fix. This isn't something like you can just snap your fingers or write an executive order or write a law. This is generational retardation, and malpractice by our leadership, by government, by federal, by state, by local government, have been fucking us over for 2 generations at least, 3, 4, if you really want to look at it. And the policies have just been stacking up really since the 60s, 70s, and onward. And we've gotten to this point now where then you're throwing in modern technology and all this other stuff that's going on. The generational dogma of the time is just like, we don't get paid enough, and I should only have to work 3 days a week. And it's like, I sympathize, right? It'd be fantastic. I would love to have a 4-day work week or 3-day work week. Like, maybe I can just work a couple of 12-hour shifts and then we're done for the week and I'm just free. Like, that'd be great. That's utopia, right? That's not real life. The problem is when you grow up with social media and Facebook telling you that everything is wrong and evil and bad and you're suffering, even though you're living in the highest standard of living in the world to some degree. It's just kind of like at a certain point you're just spoiled and rotten. But the 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 real part about it is, yes, economically speaking, like my buying power, my purchasing power is, I don't know, you can adjust for inflation compared to my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, is not, even saying half is not fair. It's probably three times less. It's probably three times less. So significant that, I mean, like I said, I have friends who are married. I have friends who are married. I have friends who have kids, and they're living with parents or they have roommates. And it's just like they're like, I don't make enough money. I can't afford it. I have to share rent with somebody. I have to have this because that's in our economy. Prince Marcel says you have a 4-day work week only because of cutbacks. Listen, like I said, I have no problem with that. There have been so many times I would work right. I'm like the efficiency kind of person. So when I was working as a manager of a restaurant, fast food, one of my biggest pet peeves is that they would like schedule you 5 or 6 hour shifts, so you're working 6 days a week on these half shifts or whatever, or 3/4 day shifts. Oh, I need you to work from 11 to 5, and it's like, dude, that's 6 hours. Like, can you just give me a 10-hour day or something? And it's like, oh, I don't need that. And it's like, dude, I don't want to work 6 days a week. You know, give me the 40 hours. Just give me 4 days. I'll work 10-hour days each. 4 days a week, and then give me 3 days off. It's efficient. I'll be more recharged and rejuvenated. Instead, I'm constantly in pain and stuff because I'm working 6 days a week. Like, I get it, efficiency. It makes sense. But I mean, there's just so much going on. There's just so much going on, and it's at a certain point, people need to accept that most of the problems are created by us. Yeah, we can blame people. There are people who are more to blame, obviously. Okay, there's obviously people who are to blame for most of the problems, but responsibility, a lot of that comes down to us. Why are we not doing anything about it? I have people at work currently, and it is stressing us all out. Absolutely, it is very stressful. I have people at work here and at previous places, and they're like, I don't understand how you got to be a manager. Like nobody's offering me a manager. I've been with the company for 3 years. Why am I not a manager yet? Why am I not a supervisor? And I'm like, I'm at a stage in my life now. I'm just honest with people, as brutally honest as I can be. I get scoffed at. I offend people, and I'm like, do you want me to lie to you, or do you want me to tell you the truth? I would prefer to tell you the truth so that you can better yourself. Yeah, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be a gut punch. But if I'm real with you and it hurts a little bit, you'd be shocked. You'd be like, oh wow, damn. Maybe you'll listen to me and understand how I do the things I do. Well, why am I a supervisor? Why was I a manager? How was I so successful in the restaurant, in the fast food industry so quickly? Well, I asked for promotion. I put myself out there. I would be like, hey, I'm interested in moving up. What do I need to do to get there? Did anyone else ask for a promotion? No, not a single one. Sometimes it would be a couple people, okay, and that's fair. I have no problem with competition. Most of the time, I had no competition because nobody was asking for promotions. Okay, they ask for a raise or something. And then sometimes some people were working at these places for so long that they would reach these pay caps. They couldn't go any higher in their pay. The only way to make more money was to move up. And I had a couple of managers, somebody I worked with forever, and she was an assistant manager forever, and she refused. She didn't want the responsibility of promotion, but eventually she was like, I gotta make more money. Like, this is ridiculous. So she got promoted, and eventually she became a general manager. And she was always a great manager. Very clearly, obviously, should have been a GM for a very long time, but she refused. And I knew she had that potential, and I pushed her too. I'd be like, if you don't just take these positions and stop, it, the only difference is instead of just being responsible for the employees now on your shift, now getting that promotion, now you're responsible for one extra, two extra people. That now you're responsible for supervisors. Just take the money. There's no real difference. GM is different because you're responsible for everybody. So, okay, I get that the stress level, but that the pay leaps were huge. Anyway, and here at my current job, people are like sour and they're like, "You've only been with the company like a year, and you're a supervisor, a site supervisor." I was like, "Damn, I've been here for like 2 years and they haven't offered me that." And I said, "They didn't offer me this either." And I told them, "You know how I did this? I asked for it." I said, well, first of all, the first day I got hired on my resume, it shows my experiences. Like, I have management experience, and I would like to move up at some point. I understand you're probably not going to hire me as a supervisor because I don't have experience in this field, but I have management experience and I can learn. And I would like you to look at that, look at me, put me as on your short list in the future. And they're all right, yeah, absolutely. And here we are. Okay, I got a promotion. Great. I told them that, and they're just, you could see like their eyes glaze over and they're not really hearing what I'm saying. It's like, dude, you have to ask for it. Ask them what you need to do to get there. A month goes by, you don't hear back, ask again. You know, keep repeating the process and be like, hey. And if they are kind of being like, a little weird about it, maybe it's because they don't want you to be in a management position. Maybe it's because you suck. Maybe it's because they suck and they are just biased or something. It's possible, right? But for me, it's like at this point in my life, I'm confident enough in my abilities, and I'm like, hey, listen, this is what I want. How do I get there? And I have failed before. Even recently, I failed. A year and a half ago, 2 years. I left my, decently paying, for the industry good. I was making 55,000 a year at KFC as a general manager, and I was like, oh, Cookout wanted to recruit me, and they were talking about, oh, you can make 70,000 a year as base salary for a GM. Um, no, not even. It was higher than that. I think it was 80,000. Yeah, I think for a base salary for a GM at Cookout, they're saying it was like 80,000, and some of their top ones are making well over 100,000 a year. The store I was training at, the guy was making 100,000 a year as a GM of a fast food joint. Insane, right? Well, it was absolute hell working there. It was like boot camp inside of an oven. It's hot. It's you're getting yelled at. Like, that's their philosophy. Like, you get yelled at like boot camp, and everyone's like harping on you, and the entire staff is basically like, you suck, you need to do better, go faster, do this and that. And we're talking like, I know that kind of lifestyle. I know that kind of work ethic, that kind of work environment. I did it at I worked at Olive Garden in the kitchen for a couple of months one summer, and that was kind of rough. That was full service restaurant. That was rough. And I also worked at Sonic Drive-In for like 3 years. I made assistant GM, and that was pretty rough. It was high pace too. So my point is, I was like 18, 19, 20, 21 back then. Now I'm like 34, 35, and they want me to move like an 18-year-old, and I'm like, I haven't moved like that in well over a decade, and I wasn't there physically or mentally, and it was just like I couldn't do it, and it got to a point I got so frustrated I fussed out the GM, and I was like, told him like you're pissing me off because he's distracting me. The way that they do it is like I'm working, I'm trying to learn, and I'm slowly getting better, but they keep like fucking with you, and I'm like, dude, you're distracting me. I can't focus on this job. Like if you give me a second, I can get back to where I need to be. Yeah, I got a little behind, but I'm learning this. And I basically me talking back, and it like everyone was like, because no one does that there, you know. And he like pulled me aside and like, don't ever do that again in front of my team. And I'm like, I get it, but at the same time you're pissing, you know what I'm saying? And then another time I just snapped. I was just like, I can't do this. Like, and I started crying. Like I walked off. I was about to like walk out, and I started crying. And I knew right then and there, like that's it. Like there's no way I can do this. Not so much that I cried in front of people, but understand I never have cried at work because it's work, but it was that emotionally and physically hard on me for whatever reason. It's just really hard job. It was hell, and I just broke down and was like crying. I was trying to hold it back, but tears were streaming down my face, and I'm like, I can't come back not because subordinates. I was a manager in training, not because subordinates saw me cry. It was because I knew right then and there, if I can't handle this now, uh, then it's not going to get easier. It's going to be the same thing every day. Like I dreaded having to go there to train, waking up every day, and I was just like, oh, here we go again, hell again, you know. And then you start second guessing yourself. Am I going to fuck up something? Something I should already learn, and then I'm going to get in trouble, and I'm going to get. And it was just like, this is not how you train it. Anyway, my point is, I failed too, and I had to accept that they're just, you know, it wasn't for me. You know, I took a risk to make stupid amounts of money. I've worked for it, but I, took that risk, and I failed at it. So I was like, okay, I had tons of money, thousands and thousands of dollars saved up from my GM position because I was making so much extra money than I was used to. It was just sitting in bank accounts, sitting in Bitcoin and stuff. And I just took a couple months off. Took a couple months off and like, after that experience at Cookout, I'm just gonna relax for a couple months, and I'll start looking for a job when the money starts getting a little thin. And I did. I took about 2 months off. I think it was about 2 months. It might have been a total of three, to be honest. After the second month, I was like, okay, I need to find a job, and I'm looking and looking and looking, and like, yeah, I'm in the third month, and money is like running out. And I'm like getting a little concerned, but point was, I needed that time to recharge, and I found this place, and I'm like, why not? I mean, most of the time it's going to be fairly easy. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do this. The only real qualification is not be a felon, know how to handle a weapon, and yeah, don't be crazy, I guess. I mean, other than that, this particular post, because I'm a supervisor, I'm first shift, and I basically do nothing but open a gate all day. And that's why I'm able to do this, because I have nothing to do 99% of the day. Whoever comes to the gate, if there's someone new, then I have to get up and go check them in. Other than that, if I already know them, I just let them in and write it down real quick. Okay? So, I don't know. Working hard is important for success, but not necessarily. Sometimes you have to work smarter, not harder. And because I really do kind of hate that phrase, work harder. Like, oh, you got to work hard, just work hard. You're not working hard enough. And it's like, I've done that my entire life. Working in the restaurant industry most of my life is hard work. It it hurts you. It's labor. Hold on 1 second. Hold on one second. I gotta leave my post to go lock a gate on the other side of the property, which is unusual. But um, I will be back, and I guess I'll continue, even though I've been going for 2.5 hours. So stand by. Okay, sorry about that. But work is work. So I don't know that what else we can really talk about. I guess we really need to wrap up anyway, but I can do a final check and see what's been happening. See if there's anything new going on. Let's see. BLM has been exposed, like significantly exposed as a scam. It looks like they paid $6 million for a friend to buy a house, but the house was bought, but it was only for $3 million. So there's just $3 million extra dollars that is just missing too. So $6 million for a friend. That's pretty scandalous. Let me check some other sources real quick. Again, this is if there's anything, any final news items or anything you wanted to talk about, now would be the time as I wrap up here. This is a very long show. Usually you don't do streams this long. Let me go to Ukraine. Okay, Ukraine, Russia stuff is interesting. Yeah, I don't really. I mean, again, if you have any final news stories or anything you want to talk about, now would be the time. It looks like Russia has regrouped troops and they may attack Kiev again, or like try to take it again. Okay, is this supposed to be real? Because this looks like Star Wars. Hold on. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. I don't think I can share the screen the way I want to. Actually, I can. Let me log out of my account because people don't need to know my username on Reddit. Okay. This looks. I'm not trying to be rude, like when we're talking about really important stuff like this, but this just looks fake. It looks like something from Star Wars. It doesn't look like real life. Okay, it just doesn't look real. I don't even know if there's audio to this. Yeah, they put music, so. Do you see this? It's like pew pew pew, and they're like blocky laser bolts from 70s Star Wars. Like, okay, maybe the resolution of the camera is not too good, but okay, if the tracers look like laser bolts, I think there's a problem. Like, come on. They look like blaster bolts from Star Wars. Like, look at that. And it's like deflecting off. Like, come on, you could just add that sound effect. I, I don't know, man. It's hard to believe a lot of stuff. It's so hard to believe. That's a video coming out of Ukraine. They're claiming to be coming out of Ukraine, and it's supposed to be Ukrainian military firing at a Russian tank in Mariupol. I'm like, sure, I'll take your word for it, but it looks like they added special effects. I mean, it's possible just the cameras are that shitty, but I don't know. And then they add shitty music to it. It's like, all right, come on, dude. Like we can do better than this. What does this mean? How do I go back to the main subreddit without logging in? There we go. Let's see. So I would just scroll down through as I'm looking at this stuff, but it is active war and it's subreddit, so I mean, it's possible to show something crazy. There's memes in here. It's an in-law or a law anti-tank guided missile launcher platform, and they've got a cat in it that's like hissing or screaming. I mean, it's kind of funny, but let's see. Let me see if we can get something really interesting. Anything? I mean, there's reports of dead people and stuff like that, and oh, the Russians were trying to kill us all, and we've heard that it's possible. They're claiming, I see something, they're claiming that the Russian military had lists of family members of troops and that they're going after the troops' families, which, I mean, it's mafioso style, but I don't know. That's my line. I don't like if I ever have to get in some kind of a conflict or armed conflict or even just a personal fight or something. Like I'm not going after people who have nothing to do with it. It's not going to happen. What is this? they have Su-25 jets flying over Pervo-Mayesk, Ukraine. Okay. But on the subreddit, they're like, "Oh, it's beautiful," and even more so, flat on the ground, engulfed in flames. It's like, okay, like you're clearly this is just propaganda. Um, Let me look up the Su-25. If I remember correctly, that's the one that has the neat wings that like fold in and out. That could be a different one. Could be a 23. Su-25. No. That one looks like a Russian version of a warthog. Maybe I'm thinking of the 23. Su-23s? Yeah, the Su-23s are the ones where they're MiGs, MiG-23s basically, right? Or no, those are definitely two separate aircraft. The MiG-23 is the one I was thinking of, where the wings like fold in and out. Not like the one of the F-17s or something where the wings fold up. These wings fold in and out like this. Like the faster they go, they point the wings in more angular direction, like an arrow. But all right, so I was wrong. In MiG-23, they were talking about Su-25s, which is their version of warthogs. Anyway, I don't know that there's anything else that I need to talk about right now, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'm looking at this. Here's a random story. Huffington Post. Poisoned alcohol sickens 500 Russian troops. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. That's an incredibly high number. Okay? It's an incredibly high number. That that would mean somebody systematically poisoned a lot of alcohol supplies and stores. It's not that it's impossible, right? It's not that it's impossible. It's that I don't. It just doesn't really make sense. Belgian member in European Union Parliament called on the European Union for tougher action against Russia in a frustrated speech. Okay, I mean, there is nothing, you can't do anything else except go to war. I don't know, like, we're pretending like there's anything else we can do but war at this point. You've sanctioned Russia more than any other nation in the history of the world. You've shut down trade to the degree like Russian ships can't dock or moor or whatever the fuck you call it. They can't come to your ports. Russian aircraft can't come to your airports. Like there's literally nothing else you can do against Russia except go to war. So I don't know what these people are asking for other than war. And I'm just like, okay, I understand what's happening in Ukraine is horrific and it's terrible, it's a tragedy, it's not okay. And yeah, by all means, your close allies do something about it. But the way they have these NATO these military alliance pacts, you're setting yourself up for failure because ideally, all right, okay, somebody is beefing with a NATO nation or a NATO nation is attacked, then you have to deal with the entirety of NATO, dropping down on you. Well, that's great if you're a small country and there's nothing you can do about it, but if it's Russia, it's like, Russia can defend itself. Russia has the ability to fight back and cause serious damage and harm. And And it's really interesting. It's like these little nations, like, oh, Belgium, we should do more against Russia. These Russians are terrible. What they're doing. It's like, bro, your country is the size of. Hold on, I'm not trying to be rude, but Belgium versus America, size difference, size comparison. That's not trying to be rude. Like if you did it on a map, Belgium is the size of roughly like the size of Maryland. So one of our smallest states. Okay, you're tiny. You're a tiny little nation. Belgium population. What's the Belgian population? 11. Really? They have 11 million people in Belgium. Okay. Versus Russia has 150 million people. You're this tiny little nation talking shit, wanting to start war with Russia. Doesn't matter what Russia's doing. It could be literally neo-Nazis from World War II. You're a tiny little nation like, oh, it's like, dude, the only reason you're doing that is because you know you have NATO on your side and that you have, a combined force. You're still trying to go to war. Millions of people are going to die. Let's be very clear about that. War, open, full-fledged war with Russia is World War III. Millions of people will die. Okay? Let's be very clear about that. And we need to have conversations, like real, legit, adult conversations on, is that really going, is it inevitable? Can we avoid it? And at the rate we're going, I don't see a way out of this because these people in Europe, these leaders, these politicians and oligarchs are belligerent and irate. And again, don't get me wrong. What's happening in Ukraine is not okay. It's not okay. But at what point do you say there's nothing I could do about it? Other than war. We will force Russia to stop with war because that's the only way that's going to happen. I don't, and they don't want to be honest with it. Like some people are openly calling for war, like, let's do no-fly zones. That's an act of war, okay? So giving them weapons really is an act of war too, but, actively calling for troops, foreign troops to aid Ukraine. It's like, okay, that's World War III because you're part of NATO, and if you start acting stupid and fucky in NATO, for the most part, they're going to enact it's either Article 4 or 5. I don't know. I get those two confused. One NATO nation gets involved in a conflict, all NATO nations get involved in a conflict. So obviously you can refuse. It's a treaty. It's not like a universal law. Like you absolutely have to. If one of these little tiny nations, let's say Belgium's like, we're going to send our 2,000 troops to Ukraine and think we're doing something. It's like, oh, that's cute. But the rest of NATO doesn't necessarily have to be like, okay, well, you're on your own, NATO. Like we didn't agree to this. So, okay, now Belgium gets bombed by Russia or something. And be like, well, that was an unsanctioned action, and you're on your own. It's possible, but we're playing with fire here, like star fire, like celestial fire, like fire that's the intensity hotter than a star, at least our star. We're able to replicate here in the form of nuclear weapons, and people keep thinking this shit is a joke, like it's not real, like it's not going to happen. So delusional. So delusional. And it's not me trying to be doom and gloom. It's trying to be like, this is a reality. This is a possibility. You should be prepared for it. Don't ever live in fear of death, right? A little bit of fear is healthy. It keeps you sane, right? If you don't have any fear, concerns, or worries, or woes, you're probably not human anymore. But don't let it dominate you. Don't let it dominate you. Finland seizes artwork shipments that were supposed to be going to Russia. I mean, it's like at a certain point, you're completely walling off Russia. And if you think that that is going to stop Russia from what it's doing and not accelerate what they're doing, I don't think you understand how this works. Because you can look at this situation objectively and say that people say like Russia's a bully and stuff, and I'd be like, well, it's kind of like Russia's the mafia and the European Union is another mafia who is in competition with their mafia, okay, with their family, and they're beefing, and one of them just happens to be in the dominant world stage. They're able to manipulate media and stuff in a better way than Russia can. They're both mafias. They're both crooks. They both do not good things. Okay, they're not inherently evil to like purest core. I wouldn't say they're like that, but like modern Russia is nothing compared to the Soviet Union as far as evil. Yeah, Putin is not a good guy. I'd probably classify Putin as evil. But let's be real here. How many of these major modern nations are like really actually good and do like really good things around the world, or do they just exploit people? You know, everything is about what do I get out of it, and so on and so forth. Let's see. What is this? Moscow Times says CDEK Postal Service has switched off live feeds from offices near Ukraine's border after images of Russian troops sending home looted goods went viral. I mean, is that really shocking? I mean, death equals fourth dimension. I agree. I think I agree. Like I kind of see like the dream world is kind of fourth dimension too. They're kind of interchangeable. Like it could be heaven or hell. Anyway, that's a really interesting conversation to have. Russia looting, plundering. Of course. Uh, when did we all agree to stop doing that in war? And again, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm really not trying to make light of this in the sense, but like, come on. For thousands of years, if you went to war with somebody and you won, or you're winning, or you've conquered or invaded an area, yeah, you that's always been a thing. Is it fucked up? Is it rude? Well, yeah. You just invaded a country, of course. And I keep having to repeat this idea that there are rules in war is the strangest thing to me. Like if I get into a fist fight with somebody, there are no rules. There is no such thing as honor and here's the reason why. If I do not know you, let's say we get into some kind of a confrontation with somebody I don't know, some random dude on the street is belligerent or drunk or just an asshole and wants to start some shit. I have no clue who you are. I don't know what you're capable of. Okay? I don't know your values or all of that is irrelevant. All I know is you are a belligerent, violently attacking me and risking my safety and my life potentially. I am going to use any and all means necessary to neutralize the threat. Up to and including killing you to defend my life. Okay? So there are no rules. That means I'll kick you in the nuts. I will rip your nuts off if it comes to that. I will bite. I will scratch. I will do whatever is necessary to survive. And I will not feel bad about it. I will not feel bad about it. And yeah, people could joke me later and be like, "You kicked him in the balls and scratched his face like a bitch or something," and I'd be like, "Well, that's because my punches weren't landing, or whatever reason I wasn't effective, so I did what was effective and I won, and now that bitch is no longer a threat to me." So, I know some people get like stupid with it. Oh, like modern day knights are like gangbangers, and we're gonna have like a gun battle, and it's like, we're gonna have some kind of honor in this, and it's like there's no honor in this. This is survival, and if you initiate it, I'm going to try to finish it. Now, scale that up to war. It's kind of like, so I so I would say like it depends. Like I've talked to people about this, like a scenario, and somehow we're talking about self defense or something. Like somebody tries to mug you or rob you or something, and you somehow best them. Let's say you're able to best them. I'm gonna rob them back. I think I got banned. I got suspended off Twitter. It might either been the thing that finally got my Twitter banned, or it was the second strike that got me on Twitter ban. When I said if somebody tries to mug you and you win, like you somehow win the fight, mug them back, rob them, steal their wallet, and steal their weapons, steal their phone, whatever they got, steal their shoes, rob them back. And apparently I can't advocate that because it's advocating for crime. And I'm like, bro, if somebody if somebody's crazy and they're doing this shit to you, like, now, granted, let's say, this is a real world scenario, and little Ukraine was instigating shit with bigger Russia, and that is true. That did happen. They were instigating shit for some time, and eventually Russia was just like, it's now or never. If we don't beat Ukraine's ass now, they're gonna join up with the rival gang, NATO, and it's gonna cause us severe problems. We're gonna lose a lot of power and ability to defend our territory and stuff. Because this is basically what it is. It's Game of Thrones. It's Game of Thrones in 2022. It's mafioso, gang war shit, but we're using nations on a national scale. Okay? It's scary. And they're using real lives. They're using real people who have nothing to do with this for the most part. What is this? There's a video of civilians going through their homes. They return to Bucha. And they're just saying, it's like, oh, look how messy it is. The Russians left our home all messy. I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to prove by this. Like, you think any military that seizes somebody's house is going to clean up after themselves? I don't. It's like I don't understand the thought process. Like you're clearly trying to just like propagandize that like your enemy is not human, that they're aliens, they're demons or something. They're just the worst possible human beings. Like, dude, every invading military does the same thing. Now, some are more strict and more organized and more disciplined. Like, I would argue America's military is probably one of the most disciplined in the world. Yeah, we kill civilians. Let's not, sugarcoat that. America kills civilians, but there are no widespread reports of rapes. Like, the military doesn't just go into a village and start raping everybody. That's just not what we do. And we don't loot. Okay, we don't loot people's belongings. We for the most part don't do stuff like that. But we will kill you. Let's be real about that. America does kill people. So much propaganda on this subreddit. I I'm looking at this because it's. I mean, I think this is really important. It's really important to see what's happening because why why would you assume that a nation. Okay, why would you assume that a nation that is in war is not going to exaggerate or propagandize? Like, I don't. Of course, what they're saying is true. It's like, yeah, I get it. Some of these people have video evidence and stuff. Okay, that's a lot more compelling than just words. Like, there's a video where they're calling the Russians orcs. I guess that's their version of they're dehumanizing a term for the Russians. They're calling them orcs in Ukraine. Again, that's a propaganda tactic as old as time. America called Japanese Japs, and we all these race we consider them racial terms now and stuff like that. But yeah. Anyway, there's a video that is purporting to be a Ukrainian forces that are looking at a washing machine or a dryer, one of the two, or it might be a two-in-one, that has a mine booby trapped in it. So basically, anyone opens it or puts clothes in it or disturbs it in any meaningful way, it's going to explode, probably killing the person who's trying to do laundry. So that's pretty sure that's classified as a war crime to lay booby traps in civilian property. Let's see. I don't really know that there's anything else. I mean, again, there's always something happening. There's always something happening. Okay. All right, that's enough of that. Well, I've been over 3 hours here, so I am out. My throat is killing me. But yeah, if you missed a lot of this, by all means, you're free to go back and look at it and check it out for yourself. The more in-depth conversation we were having. But I wish everyone the best. I really do mean that. I hope that everyone does well in the immediate and in their life, and that more people are willing to accept the truth of our reality and stop living in these weird delusional fantasies that make you weak, essentially. Like, there are bad things that happen in life. You have to embrace that and understand that is part of our reality, and it makes you stronger for it. So thank you so much for watching, if indeed you still are, and I will see you all next time.